So if you took all the information that we humans have created so far and you loaded it on high-density CDs, compact discs, and you took them out of their sleeves and everything, so you just have the CDs, and you pile them up, starting right here, the pile goes to the moon. That's according to Martin Hilbert and Priscilla Lopez in a recent article in Science that you might have seen. Goes to the moon. Possibly too much information. Based on a different study, I myself calculate, which means that it could well be an error, that if that the amount of communication that we humans will exchange this year equals in volume 350 times more information than we communicated by speech since the beginning of time. And it's interestingly, some other people have talked about all this information. But it makes me think of T.S. Eliot's prophetic verses, which some of you may know from 1934 from the poem The Rock. Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? Some brain food. Of course, we need more information. I just read in today's Times that we don't know the facts of how hot it is inside one of those stricken Japanese reactors, and we would certainly like to know that information. So we have to seek more information. But I'm not sure that more information is our biggest problem. Because remember, information by itself is inert. All by itself, it doesn't produce judgment or motivation or decisions or action or power, let alone wise decisions or beneficial action. And we saw from Gretchen's presentation how when the veterinarians know something and the physicians know something else, but they don't know it together, it's inert. What we need most of all is for people to engage with information. Engaging is kind of our key word around here. It's sometimes a little bit of a cliche, so let me try to say what I think people need to do when they engage with information. First of all, they need to discuss it with other people, including people who have different values and interests and backgrounds from themselves, so that they can make some collective sense of that information. Secondly, they have to use that information. They have to apply it. Well, it's now knowledge, it's not just information. They have to take the knowledge and apply it to help manage public resources, run organizations, work on public problems together. In turn, when they do that work together, the knowledge that they have generated generates more knowledge, more information, and possibly even wisdom. And thirdly, when they engage together, they have to recruit other people to do it in the next generation. That means new employees, new students. It often means young people. And those people have to get not only the facts, but they have to be interested and concerned about things that really matter. And they need the skills for interpretation, analysis, and collaboration. I start with a bias that we need institutions for those purposes, for engagement. I'm open to the idea that we need institutions a little bit less than we used to because now we have virtual networks. We have, as Simon Rosenberg said, all the people in the world potentially connected to a digital network. We have Facebook. And these things cut the cost of discussion and collaboration. But, again, a little brain food to just think about. I see no evidence in the United States that those networks have yet revived the things that really matter for our democracy. And I think we need to ask ourselves questions like this. Can a loose, voluntary network really recruit people who lack motivation and interest in public matters to start with? Can a loose, voluntary network reliably bring people into conversation with others who are different from themselves? Can a loose, voluntary network be accountable to all its members in a fair or just way? Can a loose, voluntary network hold governments and businesses accountable consistently, not just once in Tahrir Square, but consistently over time? I don't know the answer. I'm just asking you to think about it. Of course, there was never a golden age of American democracy. In fact, maybe things are at their best today. But we did once have pervasive institutions that had the following functions. They recruited in members. They lured them in, actually, by giving them concrete benefits, not telling them to serve their country or be civically engaged or learn, but giving them concrete benefits. But once they were in, they did get them interested in public affairs. They digested and interpreted information for them, but they also encouraged people to discuss and talk and reach their own conclusions. And they brought their own members into conversation with people who were different from them. I'm thinking especially of daily newspapers, metropolitan daily newspapers. As recently as 1970, 65% of American households said that they got the daily newspaper. For the comics, for the sports, but on the front page was the news. And that number is down to in the 20s. I'm thinking of unions, which were involved almost 30% of American households in the 1970s. Again, the 1970s, certainly not the golden age, but still, we had some powerful institutions. And then, at that time, more than 60% of Americans said that they had attended a face-to-face meeting within the past year to discuss public problems. Why? Because identity-based groups, from the Knights of Columbus to the NAACP to the Chambers of Commerce, still recruited people in. All those organizations are deeply diminished. The various streams of civic life, the NAACP and the Union and the Knights of Columbus and the Chamber of Commerce, they didn't flow together enough, but there were times when they met at the level, at least, of the union boss and the mayor or the priest and the rabbi, and there were pathways up, all the way up to the top for anybody who was recruited in. But all those institutions have fallen on very hard times. So I want to give you two proposals. I think the job for us is to figure out how to leverage the institutions that we've got to serve the knowledge needs of society. And I want to give you two quick examples that relate specifically to our work at Tisch College. First, literally millions of young Americans today are involved in structured community service programs, whether in their high schools or their elementary schools or universities or after-school programs or federal programs, federally funded programs through AmeriCorps. And it's all because of Greg Proper that this has happened. So it's a powerful infrastructure. It's a powerful institution. The Knight Commission on the Information Needs of Communities, a major blue ribbon panel last year, recommended a new core, a geek core they called it, basically college students serving nonprofits by providing IT support. We had a contract and have a contract to help the Knight Commission and the Aspen Institute develop that idea, and we would suggest three fairly dramatic changes to that idea. First of all, they said college students, people with a lot of technical skills, helping nonprofits. We say half of young Americans don't go to college. Really, the four-year college experience is only experienced by about a quarter of young Americans, and it's the other three-quarters that we need to be most involved in this. And they have much to contribute, including the one-third or so who have dropped out of high school. Second, we wouldn't make it a geek core. First of all, it's not very good PR. But besides that, the serious meaning of it is that they would be doing highly technical stuff, like wiring the nonprofit or fixing up the servers. And we would put a heavy emphasis actually on the creative communications part. So don't think wiring computers, but think making videos, writing texts, making music, interviewing neighbors, facilitating conversation. So it's much less of a geek core than a communications core. It actually could be relatively cool. And the third thing is I think the Knight Foundation, the Knight Commission had in mind a new core, a new freestanding core, kind of like Youth Build or City Year or Public Allies or the Peace Corps. I would be more inclined to turn all of those cores into, to a significant extent, communications cores. And if there are going to be some kids, some young adults who are full-time in the communications core, let them be a small vanguard that develops the models and teaches the others, so that the entire AmeriCorps system would be a communication system. Now, finally, if service is a big sector, higher education is bigger, with $136 billion in annual spending, about 3% of GDP, $100 billion in real estate holdings. And it's not just any big institution, it's one whose fundamental mission is the production and dissemination of knowledge and the promotion of dialogue and debate. But we universities have to dedicate ourselves to our own community's knowledge needs, which are no longer being met by the newspaper, by the Knights of Columbus, by the Union. Providing timely information of local relevance and with input from our community partners competes with other pursuits in a university. Overwhelmingly, rewards and prestige flow to scholars whose work is original and generalizable, but communities need work that is true, that is relevant to them, and that's accessible to them, whether it's original or generalizable or not. So universities can produce some of both, and we do at Tufts, but they do trade off, and we need to dedicate ourselves to meeting the actual knowledge needs of communities, which are no longer being met. We also have to aggregate our scattered knowledge in a way that people can actually make sense of it. Think of the traditional Metro Daily newspaper with the important stuff on the front page, the commentary in the back, and then some tidbits to get you interested. We in higher education produce nothing like that for our communities. So imagine a magazine-like website that was aggregating the knowledge that we have for our communities, and not just here at Tufts, but in every one of the several thousand universities in America. So, 3 seconds left. A youth communication core, a web portal for community information maintained by each university. These are examples of how to leverage modern institutions to meet our needs for information, engagement, knowledge, and wisdom. And I would challenge you to come up with better ideas, because I'm sure they're out there. Thank you.